Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Code and the Coding Coders Who Code It. Today, I'm joined with Sebastian Wilgosz from Hanami Mastery. Seb, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, it's super nice to meet you again and being a part of this show. So yeah, I'm a Ruby developer. I'm Seb. Recently, I started the Hanami Mastery initiative and have a lot of super fun with it, but have a lot of learning as well. Yeah, and I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, we're pumped to have you. So for those of you who don't know, the way this is going to work is I'm going to ask Seb 3 questions. The first one's going to be, what are you working on? And this could be work related, or it could even be your personal projects. Then we're going to talk about blockers. Do you have any? Or if you recently had one that you were able to solve, how'd you solve it? And then we're going to wrap the show up with you having an opportunity to share anything fun, cool, interesting that you've recently learned or discovered. It doesn't even have to be coding related. So with that being said, Seb, what are you working on?
I have 2 ongoing projects right now. First of all is the Hanami Master Initiative, which is a video and like vlog related, like joint mixed thing. So I'm not sure if you are very aware of Hanami project, but I discovered it last like 2 years ago, and I fell in love with it. And I noticed that there were some troubles that related to this project when I was first evaluating if we can use it in our company, and decided to address some of them by starting the video tutorials on YouTube. The second project I am working on right now is the official Hanami documentation guides, which I'm trying to contribute as much as I can aside of my full-time job.
That is awesome. Documentation is never easy, especially if it's not your full-time job. Do you have a certain approach or a workflow that you have for finding the parts that you want to document and then explaining them in a way that works well for beginners and experienced developers?
Well, this is a good question. I think it depends on how different projects are structured. But what I noticed in Hanami and the whole related gem families is that those projects are extremely well documented themselves by using the inline documentation and the test coverage. And it applies to the ROM, the dry-RB gem families, and also the whole Hanami components, because all of those libraries are maintained by the same people. And I was extremely surprised. So the first part of the guides was the router part. I choose the simplest and the less complicated component to document. And I just went through the test coverage, and it just documented itself, really. So there are some parts of this documentation phase which are just effortless because of the quality of the components, the libraries itself, and also the inline documentation, and that is just the common practice here. And the less easy part is the fact that Hanami is still in alpha. So when I'm trying to document things, I need to sometimes really wait for features to be completed, or I'm aware that API can change very soon, so I push back some work on it, and this is the harder part to figure out. But fortunately, the team can very easily support and point the priorities, what can be documented first, what is more stable, what we can start from.
Very cool. Now, you had said that you kind of discovered Hanami when you were at work evaluating it for a project. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we were working on the job platform, leading job platform in Switzerland, and we used Rails for it for 10 years. I mean, I didn't work in this company for 10 years, but when I joined, it was like almost 10 years old Rails project. And the team faced some troubles with scalability and with maintaining the growing application. So we tried to figure out solutions around those problems. And we started to reorganizing the files to not follow the Rails way of things and extend our architecture to not only rely on models, views, and controllers, but trying to find another abstractions to figure out where to put some parts of the code. And we tested several approaches. We tested the Trailblazer, for example, to extract the business domain out of the system. And we also tried dry libraries to just do it ourselves. And we worked on this internal architecture for around 3 years. And after a while, we started to think that maybe other people can also have similar problems. And this is where we discovered, or I discovered, the Hanami, thanks to one of my teammates. I was extremely surprised when I just got looked into the project, is that a lot of philosophy, a lot of approaches and concepts were shared with us, even though this team were completely independent. And that was a mind-blowing, because a completely asynchronous, not related team figured out way better solutions to the same problems we had. And that was amazing. We tried to patch Rails because it sounded easier, but Hanami team actually decided to do the complete framework from scratch. And that was tremendous work put in, but definitely something that will be worthy. You asked how I discovered it, and I just observed Hanami progress. And when I thought that we can try it, I was able to convince the client to evaluate the project, because the system worked with microservice-based approach. So we were allowed to experiment a little bit with some small services. And I just started to write a microservice within Hanami. It was pre-alpha version. It was very early development phase, but I was surprised how stable it was actually. So I was managed to create a complete solution. However, after the evaluation, I decided not to go with this because it was too early. It was just too early. There were no community behind it and no learning resources. And that were the main obstacles I faced.
Right. So community is such an important component when you're dealing with any kind of open source, anything. Having a strong community behind it is going to be paramount. But so you opted not to go with it in this particular case, but you are using it professionally now?
Oh, yes, definitely. So yeah, I figured out that there were some troubles with documentation, with learning resources available on the web and the community. And so I instructed my client not to go with the Hanami just yet, but I also fell in love with Hanami because it was just a great project. And I was just surprised. So what I did is I started the Hanami mastery blog to actually solve or address some of the problems I figured out. I really wanted this project to succeed, and I am only one person, but try to just do my best to help with it. So I started publishing the learning content with the idea that at least every 10% of all the income I get generated will be gave away to the Hanami team, or the Hanami development team. And that started very small, like from a dollar per month. But it was really cool because in the single project, I actually started addressing all the issues I found. Like the too little team, like small team was because not enough support, not enough community. By bringing the content to the web, I can engage more people and make more people interested in Hanami. So, like a self-fixing machine. Yeah, and that were the starts. So, but after a while, I figured out that there is a lot of overhead when I'm doing the research around Hanami project. And when I'm trying to write after the work and record videos and edit them and publish them and try consulting with the Hanami team how to do things best. But on my daily job, I worked with rice, and that was just too much for me. So I grew up to the decision to change the company to work full time with Hanami on my daily basis, which reduced a lot of overhead and saved a ton of time around the research.
Yeah, I can imagine getting to both learn and write and work with one framework is going to be substantially easier than trying to do it in two, especially because from my admittedly limited understanding, like the philosophies of Rails and Hanami are very different. Like they both use Ruby, but their philosophies on how to build out and how their architecture set up is pretty different.
Yeah, there are a lot of different things, and unifying this is very important thing in my head. Like it really simplifies things I'm doing. And it's also cool because all I'm doing is whenever I'm doing something, I'm trying to find like win-win situations, or two or more sides are benefiting from the same work. And this is exactly the case. Like just by changing the job, I was able to start publishing the content where the company I'm working on actually benefits a lot, because they really want their developers to be more educated, right? And onboarded easier. So, and when I'm doing the work, I was doing the research at the same time. So yeah, that is one of the benefits. And the other great part was that from all this work, the Hanami project benefits at all as well, and the team and development, like everything just wins in this situation. That is something that I'm proud of, I think.
Right. Yeah, no, that is awesome, especially the way that you're able to do this work, not just for your personal project and then your company that you work for, but how it trickles back to improving the whole framework itself. And you actually said something that kind of piqued my interest when you were talking about you're writing these blog posts or you're writing content around how to use the framework. And you talked about it being a lot easier to onboard developers when they have that. And you had also talked about at your last position where you guys tried to essentially patch Rails and build your own architecture to solve your problem. What kind of benefit do you see between using something that's very open source and using something that you build internally? Like, how much easier is it when a developer can find their own resources versus have to figure out who to talk to internally to figure out why does this thing work this way?
Well, if you develop anything internally, you have very much easier time in maintaining that, because you don't need to care. You don't need to care about other people. You don't need to care about other projects using it. You don't need to care about versioning. All you need to care is just your team, your consensus, what you agreed on, and your style, right? You don't need to be super strict about test coverage if the company policy is not, right? You don't need to care too much about code styling if there is no time for it. But all those things start to matter when you release a project to the public, because you need to be very, very, very strict about the security patches, the security bugs, and this introduces a lot of overhead to the company. However, from my personal point of view, when I started working on open source projects or releasing my knowledge to the public, I benefited like crazy from the feedback I got from the community, from other ideas people have. Often there were like much smarter people than I was. So whenever I'm trying to work publicly on something, I deliver at the end much greater quality. So this is a trade-off for the company. Definitely it's easier to just work on something internally, but the price you pay for it is that you learn and your team learn much less.
Yeah. And I mean, also, if something, even if it's not an internal project, like you're trying to onboard a new developer and you have to bring them in and you have this custom Rails architecture and you have to try and get them up to speed on that, you can only use your internal documentation really on, hey, this is why we made this decision or this is how we do this. But with using something like Hanami, you end up with what is an up and coming community to kind of help almost offset some of the onboarding struggles, because if someone's looking at something, they have, that thing's documentation or Stack Overflow question. And how much do you think that is a huge win for using the right open source tool versus just trying to force an architecture where it may not belong?
The documentation really matters. What I learned is that documentation is very, very important part, and a lot of open source projects struggle with it. And if you have great documentation, a lot of problems just do not exist. I found that less experienced developers often learn from tutorials and like Railscast, screencasts, maybe just blog posts or whatever, or Udemy courses. But when people get very like seniorish, they start to be more effective just by reading the documentation and the code, or even tests, and they learn by doing, by trying things, but by just applying the libraries, or when there is a bug, they usually just trace it back and patch it, or even commit to the open source project. So this is like completely different mindset. From certain level of seniority, you don't really get a lot from maybe from blog posts, but more from the great documentation, I think. However, that may not be true for ideas like applying some patterns, some programming patterns, some architectural styles, and so on. But yeah, just this is my thought.
Sure. It's kind of like learning when you're cooking, and it's knowing how to cook is sometimes a little different than just being able to cook off of a recipe. Like I enjoy cooking a lot, and as long as there's a recipe in front of me, I make stuff that's edible. But my sister's boyfriend is a real chef, and he cooks a completely different way. So I do understand that, like, when you're slightly less experienced at all different levels, like those recipes, they can teach you a lot about mixing things together and why certain flavors go well. But then you hit a certain point where you're almost able to just kind of understand what you're trying to create when you're cooking, and you no longer need that recipe. You just kind of are reaching for the right things. So yeah, I can understand how, as you move up in seniority, those tutorials or those very basic blog posts become less helpful, because they're not actually showing you anything that you would use in your skill set to do your type of problem solving.
But from a blogger and screencaster perspective, this is really unfair. Like reality, I mean reality, really unfair reality, because it's way easier to create a blog post or a video for less experienced people, for basics, for how to do A and B. But the more advanced content you try to prepare, you need more research, you need more preparation, and you have less audience. There is like way less senior developers out there, and most of them don't watch screencasts anymore. So this is a really, really, really tough situation when you want to, for example, really prepare content for senior people. This is tough from profitability point of view, and this is I think this is why like a lot of content for seniors is just paid, like very like expensive courses, expensive subscriptions, paid subscriptions or something, because there is no other way around.
Right. Yeah. And that actually brings us, that's a perfect segue into kind of my next question for you, is talking about your blockers or blockers that you've had, and kind of how you've solved them or current blockers. And it sort of sounds like constructing good content for seniors is one of your blockers right now.
Well, one of the blocker and the tough situation I have right now is that just I just got the third child, and this turned my whole life upside down again. But this is not something I want to really solve. I want to just wait until it will be solved on its own.
It might take a few years. Congratulations, though, on a
Thanks.
third child. You are a very brave man, and I definitely see how that is a bit of a blocker. But you seem to be doing all right. You look well rested for someone with a newborn.
Anyway, like one of the toughest things I'm facing currently is the ideas generation, for example. And this is where whoever listens to me really can help, like, because Hanami Master is a fully open source project. People can contribute to the content, people can contribute to the project code. This is just everything public and is hosted on GitHub. So if anybody has an idea what I could cover, like if there are any great Ruby gems, for example, that can be applicable for Rails and for Hanami and for Rodal, they are just framework agnostic, which is what I think every gem should be. Then just send me the suggestion and I will gladly cover it up, because the idea generation is kind of toughest part. I have a nice system for ideas at the moment, but there is often just a lack of the next thing to write about or record video about. So yeah, this is one of the toughest parts I have at the moment, but I solved it partially, or I helped myself bringing the ideas to the project by finding collections. For example, Hanami is a nice project because it consists of multiple components. Like there is a Hanami action gem, Hanami validation gem, Hanami router, Hanami API, and so on and so on. And I just opened my Obsidian note-taking system, and I listed all the components. And I said, okay, I will just cover all of them at some point. Then, because collection of 3 gem families, like they merged together 3 gem families, which is the ROM RB, dry RB, and Hanami components. I did the same for ROM and dry as well. And I ended up with like almost like 100 ideas for episodes to have. So this is definitely a fallback I have, and a nice idea for anyone, I think, who consider starting blogging and really don't think about the ideas, just how to get ideas, how to get to know what to write about.
Yeah, no, that seems like a really good workflow, and I am with you on the dumping stuff in Obsidian. Andrew Mason has turned me onto that, and I am a full convert.
I listened to the episode about Obsidian, and I use it for over a year already. And I drive whole Hanami Master initiative around purely inside of the Obsidian. And I sim-linked, for example, because I work also on the Hanami guides, but Hanami guides are just markdown files. And the same for example, dry RB documentation. So I sim-linked those projects to my Obsidian vault, and I have all linked together. So whenever I want to, for example, write the new episode, new blog article, I have all my network of documentation linked together. And this really helps. And I this is a free idea I have for you.
That is awesome. That's actually a really good idea. I don't know why I didn't think of that before, and I'm mad that Andrew Mason hasn't thought of it and told me about it. But we will be stealing that idea, rest assured. And so we're gonna do a quick wrap up, or not even that quick. You can take as long as you want, really. But the last question, something cool or interesting that you want to share with us. Obviously, there's probably a ton of developers out there that don't know Hanami yet. They do now. They'll probably look into that. But is there anything else that you wanted to share? And it doesn't have to be code related too. If you're just like, hey, I don't know if you people know about this thing. There's sky's the limit. You can talk about whatever you want.
Well, there is something I figured out. Recently, I discovered the Jordan Harbinger show. And then one of the first episodes I listened, because this is a podcast, I listened there, was the Adam Grant interview, which is the author of book, Are You a Giver or Taker? And that was a really mind-blowing interview, which I totally recommend for everyone. He talked about how to figure out if you are a giver and why you should be. Like, when you do anything at any time, just always focus on providing a value to other people. And that was really astonishing discovery for me. This is something I tried to do, but also sometimes I just was kind of egoistic, and I really didn't have those things. I didn't thought too much about those things, and this really improved my life. And they also talked a lot about building a successful networking system, sets of contacts, and how to do it well, how to bring people together, how to give them value and keep them staying with you for a long time. And that was also something I had no experience at all, no learnings at all. And I think this kind of stuff, if I could learn that like 10 years ago, I would be a completely different person right now.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's basically one of the biggest things about getting into the industry as a second career dev or self-taught is like developing that network of folks. So I definitely could see how learning to network effectively, especially early on, will make a huge difference. But learning it at any time is going to be helpful. But that is I like that one. I will add that to the show notes. But Seb, other than Hanami Mastery, what are other good ways for people to find and connect with you on the internet?
Well, I almost everywhere. Because the Hanami community is quite kind of small. I have like 12 chat applications at the moment installed.
Oh, that's an ADHD nightmare right there. Or is it a good thing? I don't know.
Yeah, double-edged sword, I think.
Yeah.
But the best thing to connect with me is at the Twitter. I think the Twitter. So just reach out to me as Wilgosz or it's Seb Wilgosz, I think. I don't remember, sorry. But you can find me.
It'll be in the show notes. Don't worry, we'll have a link.
or the official Hanami Mastery account. Currently, I drive both of them myself, but soon I will start delegating some work.
Awesome. That's awesome. I will put that in the show notes. And before we sign off here, is there anything else that you wanted to add that we didn't get to talk about?
Thank you for inviting me to the show. And also thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for watching and reading whatever we content creators publish. This is really awesome stuff that you are here, and just stay here forever.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a blast, and shared some awesome resources with us that I can't wait to build the show notes for this. It's going to be a giant list of links, and you've given me a lot of stuff to work on my own time too and play around with.
I think we can start some kind of a Obsidian fans guild or something.
Yeah, it can be a subset of the Andrew fan club, because I think you might be one of the biggest talker up of it. Thank you again for coming on and talking with me and spending time with me, especially with the time zone difference, because you are not in the same time zone as me. It is currently 4:40 my time, and it's what, your time?
Almost 11 p.m., but this is the only time it's quiet here, so
I get that. That is past my bedtime though. So thank you so much for making time to come on the show. It was a blast to have you, and we'll definitely have you on again.
Okay, thanks. See you then.